You touch the screen of your phone with your thumb, scrolling past a photo of someone's perfectly posed wedding day. Your eyes linger for a second on the smooth curve of a ring, on a hand clasped in another. It's a reflex, a tiny ping in your brain that says this is the goal. This is how it's done. That reflex feels older than language, deeper than thought. It feels like a law written into your very bones. But here's the catch. That feeling, that deep-seated instinct you're touching right now, might be one of the most successful marketing campaigns in the history of our species. Because for the vast, sprawling story of human existence, the idea that one man and one woman are destined to pair up for life is not the ancient truth we assume it to be. In fact, the story our biology tells, and the ruins our ancestors left behind, point to something far more complicated, more strategic, and in many ways, more brutal. And if you feel a quiet tension between what you were told love should be and what your deepest, most primal self sometimes whispers, you are not broken. You are listening to an echo, a 200,000-year-old memory that knows a different truth. Because this isn't just about romance or social rules. This is about survival, and the most high-stakes project your ancestors ever undertook, making sure a fragile, screaming, utterly helpless baby didn't die. In the world we evolved for, that baby was a catastrophic liability. It couldn't run from predators. It couldn't forage for food. It needed constant carrying, constant feeding, constant protection. For years, not months, but years. A mother doing that alone was a mother with one hand tied behind her back, a walking beacon for every threat on the savannah. She needed help, and so our species, over millennia, didn't just stumble into pairing up. It engineered a survival web. But the shape of that web, the number of strands holding it up, that's where the myth begins. Let's strip everything back. Forget religion. Forget laws. Forget every romantic comedy you've ever seen. Go back to the beginning of you. You exist today because, in an unbroken chain stretching back thousands of generations, a baby survived. Not just your parents or your grandparents. Every single one of your direct ancestors, for 200,000 years, successfully navigated the gauntlet of childhood in a world actively trying to kill them. And the single biggest factor in whether a child lived or died wasn't just a mother's love. It was the number of adults who showed up to help. One pair of hands was rarely enough. This is the visceral, non-negotiable math of human survival. It takes a village, not just a vow. And so, evolution got creative. It didn't just build bodies, it built bonds. But it built them to be flexible, to be strategic, to stretch and contort, to fit whatever nightmare scenario a particular group was facing. The monogamous pair, isolated in their own little cave, that was often a death sentence. Our ancestors were playing chess with extinction, and their winning move was never to put all their pieces on one square. So what did this survival web actually look like? If we could step back into a camp of our early ancestors, say 100,000 years ago, what would we see? First, you'd notice the children. They're everywhere, and they're rarely with just their biological mother. Older kids are carrying toddlers. Aunts are passing around infants. Grandmothers are mashing food for a child that isn't theirs. The men, they're not all standing around with one specific woman. Some are off hunting in a group, a dangerous cooperative effort where the meat, if they get any, will be brought back and shared by everyone. Others might be foraging or repairing tools, or just present. The key is that the labor of keeping the tiny, vulnerable humans alive, the feeding, the protecting, the teaching is spread across the whole group. Genetic ties matter, but survival ties matter more. A child who loses a parent isn't orphaned. They are absorbed. This system has a name. It's called cooperative breeding, and it is the bedrock upon which our species built its success. It's why we have such big, complex social brains. We needed them to navigate this intricate web of who owes whom, who can be trusted, and who will hold the baby while you run for your life. Now, here is where our modern romantic ideal collides with ancient, gritty reality. In this survival web, what is the role of a father? From a purely cold, biological perspective, his genetic contribution is minimal, a single act. But his resource contribution is everything. For a mother, the ideal scenario isn't necessarily a faithful, devoted partner who only has eyes for her. The ideal scenario is a reliable flow of resources, meat, protection, support, to keep her and her child alive. And if that flow is more stable coming from a network of men, or from one high-status man who also supports other women, or from a brother who stays close to help her, then evolution will quietly favor the behaviors and the feelings that make that happen. The emotional glue we call love and jealousy is powerful, but it evolved to serve this ruthless calculus of survival. It had to be flexible. A feeling that made a man fiercely protective of one woman and one child might be advantageous in one environment, but a feeling that made him protective of all the children in his sister's band, willing to share meat with the whole group, might be the winning strategy in another. Our ancestors weren't following a script called marriage. They were running thousands of different survival experiments, and the emotional toolkits that worked best got passed down to us. And this is where archaeology begins to whisper a story that textbooks often shout over. Take the famous 4,500-year-old lovers of Valdero, a Neolithic skeleton couple found in Italy, buried facing each other, arms entwined. They are held up as the eternal symbol of romantic love. A beautiful story, but they are an exception, not the rule. For every couple buried together, there are countless more solitary burials, or group burials, or burials where the arrangement makes no pair bond sense at all. The evidence suggests that for most of prehistory, how you were buried reflected your role in the group, not your connection to a single partner. Your grave goods might be your tools, your ornaments, symbols of your clan, not a matching set with someone else's. The romantic pairing, immortalized in death, seems to become a bigger cultural preoccupation much later, often alongside things like agriculture and the idea of land as private property. When you have something to inherit, suddenly it becomes very important to know exactly who your children are. But let's go deeper, to a time before farms, before permanent settlements. Let's look at our closest genetic relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos. Chimpanzee societies are dominated by violent, competitive males who fight for status and mate promiscuously. Bonobo societies, meanwhile, are matriarchal and use social bonding and a lot of sex to resolve conflict and build alliances. Our own behavior is a bizarre, unique mosaic of both. We have the capacity for fierce, possessive jealousy and for deep, communal cooperation. We form powerful, sometimes lifelong pair bonds, and we have secret affairs, and we build chosen family networks that have nothing to do with blood or marriage. This isn't hypocrisy. This is the legacy of a species that survived by being socially flexible. Our ancestors had to be capable of forming a tight, cooperative pair bond to raise a difficult child, and capable of maintaining broader alliances for mutual defense and food sharing. The brain that can feel wrenching jealousy is the same brain that can feel profound, selfless love for a friend's child. It's all part of the same survival toolkit. So if the isolated, lifelong, romantic monogamous pair wasn't the default human setting, what was? The leading theory from anthropology and evolutionary biology is something called social monogamy. It means you have a primary partner, a person you come home to, cooperate with, raise kids with. But your social and even sexual world is not strictly, exclusively limited to that one person. It's a core partnership embedded within a wider supportive network. This is the model you see in many historical and hunter-gatherer societies. It's pragmatic. It allows for the intense cooperation needed to raise a human child, while also maintaining the broader alliances that keep the whole group safe. It acknowledges a simple truth. It's dangerous to put all your eggs in one basket, especially when you're living on the edge of starvation. This system ran on a complex economy of favors, trust, and reciprocity, and it required a psychological engine to power it. This is where the science gets strange, and where we have to look at the most intimate wiring of our own brains. Because researchers now suspect that the very emotions we use to build a modern marriage, the attachment, the jealousy, the love, are the same emotions our ancestors used to navigate this ancient, flexible survival web. They were just applied more broadly. Your deep sense of loyalty wasn't meant for just one person. It was the glue for your whole band. Your jealousy wasn't just about sexual fidelity. It was an alarm bell against someone stealing your survival resources or threatening your social standing. The in-love feeling, with all its obsessive focus, might have evolved not to lock you down for life, but to catalyze a strong initial bond between two people long enough to get a child through its most vulnerable first years. After that, the bond might deepen into something else, or it might loosen, allowing the broader network to take more weight. The point is, our emotional firmware is built for flexibility, not rigid, lifelong exclusivity. And when you feel a mismatch between that old, flexible software and the new, rigid rules of society, that's not a bug. It's a feature, a very, very old one. So we have the theory that our ancestors survived through flexible, social bonds within a cooperative group, not through isolated, romantic monogamy. But a theory needs proof. How do we know this isn't just a modern story we're projecting onto the past? To find out, we have to go to the lab, not of test tubes, but of bones, genes, and stones. And what researchers have pieced together from these fragments is a narrative that completely upends the fairy tale. First, look at the shape of our bodies, the silent testimony in our bones. For decades, scientists looked at the slight differences in size and shape between human males and females, and saw evidence of a species built for head-to-head male competition over mates. The classic picture of a monogamous or harem-driven society. But the data never quite fit. The difference is there, but it's subtle. Compared to gorillas, where males are twice the size of females, our bodies tell a story of relatively muted physical competition. Instead, they whisper of something else: coalition. Success didn't go to the biggest brute who could monopolize females. It went to the man who could build alliances, who could cooperate with other men to hunt and defend, and who could, in turn, be trusted by the women in the group to be a reliable provider, not a sole proprietor. Your male ancestor wasn't necessarily the strongest. He was probably the most socially intelligent. Then, there are the genes. They are a messy, glorious ledger of our past. If strict, lifelong monogamy had been the universal human pattern for hundreds of thousands of years, our genetic diversity would show it. But it doesn't. Studies of our DNA reveal that, throughout prehistory, it was more common for women to move between groups than men. And more strikingly, the genetic record suggests that successful men, those who passed on their genes, often did so with more than one partner. Not at a tyrannical, king-like scale, but in a steady, low-key pattern. The evidence is written in the subtle variations of our Y chromosomes and mitochondrial DNA. The story they tell isn't of serial lifelong pairs. It's of a social fabric where bonds were stable, but connections were multiple and strategic. The goal was to weave a safety net, not to build a fence. Perhaps the most profound evidence, however, isn't in our genes or bones, but in the one organ built explicitly for this social world: your brain. Neuroimaging studies show something fascinating: the brain regions that light up when a mother feels love for her child. The caudate nucleus, the ventral tegmental area, rich with dopamine and oxytocin, are the same regions that activate when you feel romantic love, deep friendship, or even the loyalty you feel toward your closest team or tribe. The monogamy myth. What ancient humans really thought about marriage. Evolution didn't invent a new, separate romantic love circuit for marriage. It took the ancient, powerful circuit for caretaking and bonding. The circuit that made an ancestor share food with a crying child that wasn't hers, or that made a man risk his life for his band, and applied it to the pair bond. Romantic love is a brilliant, intense adaptation of a much older, more communal glue. It's a spotlight, but it was meant to shine on a stage shared by many characters. So let's land this back where it started. In you. You are sitting there, perhaps alone, perhaps with a partner, perhaps surrounded by friends who feel like family. You feel the weight of that ancient, flexible wiring every single day. You feel it in the quiet anxiety that maybe your life doesn't look like the happily ever after you were sold. You feel it in the profound comfort of your oldest friendship, the one that has outlasted romances. You feel it in the surge of protectiveness you have for a niece or nephew, a love that is bone deep but requires no shared DNA. You feel it in the strange, simultaneous hunger for a secure, exclusive anchor and for a wide, vibrant community. This tension isn't a sign that you're doing love wrong. It's a sign that you are human. You are operating a 200,000-year-old social operating system inside a world that insists on a very new, very specific application. The fairy tale of destined, exclusive, lifelong monogamy is a beautiful story, and for many, it becomes a true and fulfilling one. But it is a story, a recent, powerful cultural invention that harnessed our deep bonding instincts and pointed them toward a specific, narrow goal. It worked wonderfully to build stable agricultural societies, to pass down property, to organize communities under gods and kings. But it did not erase the older blueprint. That blueprint's primary directive was never find your one true love. It was keep the children alive. And to do that, it made us crave multiple kinds of connection, to hold loyalty and flexibility in the same heart, to love deeply but in more than one direction. So the next time you scroll past that perfect wedding photo and feel that ping, followed by a whisper of something else, something like loneliness or confusion or a longing you can't quite name, understand what you're truly touching. You are not touching a biological mandate. You are touching the ghost of an ancient survival strategy, feeling for the edges of a web that was meant to hold more than two. That quiet ache isn't for a missing person. It's for a missing world, a world where love was a shared project, and your cradle was held by many hands. You exist today not because two people found everlasting romance, but because an entire network decided, time and again, that you were worth keeping alive. The most romantic thing your ancestors ever did was to share.